Hollywood once made audiences believe that beauty could last forever. But the female stars who once ruled the screen defined glamour and created trends were later scrutinized by that same industry for every wrinkle, every change in their bodies, and every moment of weakness. Some sought treatment to preserve their former image. Others battled illness, substance abuse, mental health crises, and ridicule, while some simply grew older without apologizing for the passage of time. What is shocking is not only how they changed, but how Hollywood reacted when they no longer looked like the women on posters from decades earlier. Some lost their careers, some nearly lost themselves, but others managed to find their way back. So who paid the highest price? Who overcame everything? And which stories were hidden beneath the glow of the red carpet for decades?
Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars.
Number 20. Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher never wanted Princess Leia to be a girl waiting to be rescued. She gave the character sharpness, courage, and a talent for fighting back that turned Leia into a cultural icon far beyond those famous braids. Carrie had a distinctive beauty, but it was her lightning-fast intelligence and fearless way of speaking that made her irreplaceable. While working on the Star Wars films, Carrey used cocaine and other drugs as she tried to cope with pressure-demanding schedules and psychological struggles that had not yet been properly treated. She was later diagnosed with bipolar disorder and did not hide her journey. Through wishful drinking and numerous interviews, Carrey turned painful experiences into stories that were both funny and piercing, helping the public view mental health with less prejudice. In late 2016, Carrey suffered a serious cardiac event aboard a flight and died several days later. The medical report later mentioned sleep apnea and several other contributing factors, showing that the cause could not be reduced to a single headline. Oh my God, the world did not just lose Princess Leia. Hollywood lost someone brave enough to say the things others were afraid to admit. And the next actress was also controlled by an invisible fear at the height of her fame. Number 19. Kim Basinger. In 1989's Batman, Kim Basinger brought a classic beauty that was never passive. She had cool eyes, a soft voice, and a sensual presence that seemed to brighten every frame. Later, LA Confidential earned Kim an Academy Award and proved that she was more than a beauty icon. She could create a deeply conflicted character, both vulnerable and fully aware of how the world was exploiting her. Few people knew that her confidence on screen existed alongside severe social anxiety and panic attacks. Kim once described a fear that made even ordinary activities difficult. During the 1990s, she also fell into a financial crisis after a dispute involving the film Boxing Helena, eventually filing for bankruptcy. A star who had once earned millions of dollars suddenly found herself facing numbers that could destroy an entire career. Rumors about cosmetic procedures also followed Kim, although she never confirmed most of the speculation. What is more important is that she returned and won an Oscar after that dark period. While Kim fought her way back into the spotlight, Kelly LeBrock chose a different path. She almost completely walked away from Hollywood, even though she had once been one of the most desired women of the 1980s. Number 18. Kelly LeBrock. With just one scene in which she stepped out wearing a red dress in The Woman in Red, Kelly LeBrock became a sensation. Weird Science later turned her into the image of a perfect woman created by a computer, a kind of beauty that seemed almost unreal. Her thick hair, striking eyes, and confident presence made Kelly look as though she had been born to stand in front of a camera. But behind that image, she was never completely comfortable with the machinery of fame. Her marriage to Steven Seagal ended amid tension and intense media attention. Afterward, Kelly left Los Angeles, greatly reduced her acting work, and chose a more private life. Speculation about fillers, rhinoplasty, and facelifts appeared over the years, but she never confirmed any of it. The slowing of her career was also often blamed on her appearance, even though she repeatedly made it clear that leaving Hollywood was a deliberate choice. Kelly devoted her time to her family and to organizations supporting children with serious illnesses. Perhaps the biggest twist is that Hollywood did not completely reject her. She chose to leave a place that no longer gave her peace. But for Kirstie Alley, stepping away was almost impossible because her body was constantly turned into national entertainment. Number 17. Kirstie Alley. When Kirstie Alley joined Cheers, she brought an entirely new energy to the show. Rebecca Howe was ambitious, chaotic, and vulnerable, and Kirsty had the ability to turn a moment of failure into a brilliant comedy scene. The role earned her an Emmy and a Golden Globe, making her one of the most beloved television actresses of the late 1980s and early 1990s. But when Kirsty's weight changed, the media nearly stopped talking about her acting. Photographs of her were placed side by side, and every gain or loss became breaking news. She partnered with Jenny Craig, appeared on reality shows, and often used humor to regain control of the narrative. Even so, behind those confident statements was a woman living under a level of scrutiny that most male actors of her generation never had to endure. In December 2022, her family announced that Kirsty had died from colon cancer, which had been discovered only a short time earlier. Her death came so quickly that audiences barely had time to prepare. People had discussed every kilogram on her body, while the most dangerous illness was developing in silence. And silence had also surrounded the emotional battle of the strongest warrior in the Terminator franchise. Number 16. Linda Hamilton. Sarah Connor in The Terminator began as an ordinary waitress, simply trying to survive. By Terminator 2, she had become an image of strength, discipline, and nearly unbreakable determination. Linda Hamilton transformed her body, her voice, and her entire presence to create one of the most influential female action heroes in film. But the woman in real life never felt as invincible as the character she played. Linda lived for years with cycles of depression and mania before being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. During the period when she was not receiving appropriate treatment, she turned to alcohol and medication as a way to calm emotional changes that she did not yet understand. It affected her health, her relationships, and her ability to work. After receiving treatment, Linda gradually became more stable and publicly shared her story to help others understand that they did not have to fight alone. I have great respect for the fact that Linda never used her diagnosis as an excuse, nor did she treat it as something shameful. She viewed treatment as part of her responsibility to herself and her family. While Sarah Connor taught audiences to prepare for the future, Linda taught them to face the present. However, the next star carried her sadness more quietly, even with 2 Academy Awards sitting on her shelf. Number 15. Jessica Lange. Jessica Lange once possessed a beauty that could almost make audiences forget to breathe. But it was her talent that gave her lasting power. Tootsie earned her first Academy Award, while Blue Sky brought her a second. Jessica could become a gentle woman in one scene and erupt like a storm in the next. That kind of power could never be created by flattering lighting or a perfect camera angle alone. Jessica has spoken about periods of depression that followed her throughout her life. The sadness did not disappear simply because she received awards or stood before applauding crowds. Over time, speculation about facelifts, eyelid surgery, and other cosmetic procedures appeared, but she never publicly confirmed any of it. Once again, the public tried to turn natural change into a sensational story that was easier to sell than a complicated mental health struggle. Jessica continued to receive recognition in television and theater, while many actresses of her generation were pushed aside. She did not defeat aging by becoming younger. She defeated it by becoming deeper. But the next woman did more than leave a famous television series. She built an entire beauty empire while repeatedly denying rumors about her own appearance. Number 14. Victoria Principal. In Dallas, Victoria Principal played Pamela Barnes Ewing, a woman trapped between 2 hostile families. With her thick, dark hair, balanced figure, and sharply defined beauty, she became one of the most glamorous faces on American television. But Victoria did not want to spend the rest of her life repeating a single character, even though Dallas had given her worldwide fame. After leaving the series, Victoria focused on business and launched her Principal Secret skincare line in 1989. Her marriage to plastic surgeon Harry Glassman caused rumors about cosmetic procedures to spread even further. Victoria repeatedly denied the speculation, saying that her appearance came from skincare, nutrition, and a disciplined lifestyle. Whether people believed her or not, no one had evidence that could turn those rumors into facts. Victoria also dealt with a blood clotting disorder, but she continued to maintain an active life and support charitable causes. She left acting while she still could have continued, something rarely seen in an industry that constantly makes people afraid of being forgotten. But while Victoria controlled the moment she stepped away from the stage, Faye Dunaway spent years watching her fame become overshadowed by stories about unpredictable behavior and behind-the-scenes conflict. Number 13. Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway did not enter the screen quietly. In Bonnie and Clyde, she stared directly into the camera with cold beauty and burning ambition. Chinatown transformed her into a painful mystery, while Network earned her an Academy Award for portraying a woman consumed by power and television ratings. Faye represented an era when Hollywood allowed actresses to be both glamorous and frightening. After the height of her career, stories about conflicts on set and erratic behavior began to overshadow her achievements. Reports concerning her mental health appeared, but many details were never fully explained by Faye in public. At the same time, changes in her face led to speculation about Botox facelifts and procedures involving her lips. She never confirmed the list of treatments created by the media. The saddest part is that every news story caused audiences to view her old performances differently. But being difficult to work with does not mean every rumor is true, and a health diagnosis should never become a weapon used to humiliate someone. The next darkness took a more modern form. It appeared in thousands of comments only minutes after Madonna stepped onto the Grammy stage. Number 12. Madonna. Madonna built her career by changing before the world could place her inside a fixed category. From Like a Virgin to Vogue, she did not simply create music. She controlled fashion imagery and the public conversation about women's autonomy. Every era introduced a different Madonna, but her challenging gaze and her ability to make the entire world talk about her never disappeared. At the 2023 Grammy Awards, Madonna's face became the subject of intense discussion. Several doctors who had never treated her speculated about fillers, facelifts, and other procedures. Madonna did not confirm those claims and responded that the attention given to her appearance reflected both ageism and misogyny. Within a matter of hours, a celebration of music had been turned into a trial over her face. I understand why the public is curious, but curiosity does not create the right to humiliate someone. Madonna built her image through absolute control, so losing control over how others viewed her may have been the most bitter contradiction of all. The next woman chose a completely different response. Cher admitted to certain procedures and nearly dared anyone to tell her how she should live in her own body. Number 11. Cher. Cher has lived through more eras than most of the people who have mocked her. From I Got You Babe with Sonny Bono to her solo career television tours and her Academy Award for Moonstruck, she continued to reinvent herself without losing her distinctive deep voice. Her long black hair, daring outfits, and unapologetic attitude made Cher one of the most enduring icons in American entertainment history. Unlike many stars, Cher has never completely denied having cosmetic procedures. She has openly discussed certain choices, including rhinoplasty and other treatments, while insisting that they were personal decisions. The controversy remained, but Cher refused to play the victim. She did not ask everyone to like her appearance. She simply refused to give them ownership over her body. Cher also experienced periods of poor health connected to the Epstein-Barr virus, forcing her to temporarily step away from work. Even so, she continued recording and performing after many people believed her career was over. The lesson here is clear. Change is not always evidence of collapse. For Amanda Bierce, the greatest change was not on her face, but in her decision to reveal a truth that could have cost her everything. Number 10. Amanda Bierce. Amanda Bierce is remembered for playing Marcy on Married with Children, the small but fearless neighbor who was always ready to confront Al Bundy. Her short hair, sharp delivery, and confident presence made Amanda an important part of the show for many seasons. But behind the laughter, she was living during a time when openly discussing one's sexual orientation could cause an actor to disappear from casting lists. In 1993, Amanda publicly came out as gay. It was not a scandal, but Hollywood at the time could treat it like one. She became one of the first well-known television actresses to make such a decision, and later became an active supporter of the LGBTQ+ community. Amanda gradually shifted her focus toward directing, working behind the camera on many television programs, rather than depending entirely on roles offered by other people. Today, Amanda's hair has turned silver, but her direct and confident energy remains unchanged. Her story proves that not every revealed secret destroys a person. Sometimes the truth is the way out. And while Amanda accepted her identity, Michelle Pfeiffer did something Hollywood could barely understand. She slowed down at the exact moment the entire world wanted her to keep running. Number 9. Michelle Pfeiffer. In 1983's Scarface, Michelle Pfeiffer appeared like an ice sculpture slowly melting inside a room filled with smoke and power. The role of Elvira showed how beauty could become a cage, while Michelle proved that she possessed far more than a perfect face. Dangerous Liaisons, The Fabulous Baker Boys, and Batman Returns later confirmed the range of an actress who was often underestimated simply because she was so beautiful. At the height of her career, Michelle slowed down to spend time with her family and choose her projects more carefully. Her absence produced countless theories, but there was no secret scandal that explained everything. She simply did not want her work to consume her private life. When she returned, Michelle did not try to recreate the young woman from Scarface. She brought the calmness and depth of someone who had lived a full life outside the frame. Perhaps the most surprising thing is that Michelle did not need a dramatic collapse to become interesting. In Hollywood, maintaining personal boundaries is also a quiet battle, but the next actress faced a different kind of pressure. Cheryl Ladd entered a television series that already had a major icon, then spent decades proving that she was more than a replacement. Number 8. Cheryl Ladd. When Cheryl Ladd joined Charlie's Angels, she had to replace Farrah Fawcett, one of the most famous faces in America. It seemed like an almost impossible task, but as Chris Monroe, Cheryl brought warmth, an approachable smile, and an independence that quickly made the character popular. Her blonde hair and blue eyes turned her into an icon, but it was her persistence that kept her on the show for several seasons. As age began to appear on her face, Cheryl did not completely disappear, nor did she try to shock people to regain attention. She continued accepting carefully chosen roles, spoke about maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and accepted that her image had to change. In an industry that often treats aging as failure, that calm acceptance was almost an act of rebellion. She did not need to prove that she was still 25 years old to be considered beautiful. I think Cheryl reminds us that not every story needs a major tragedy. Sometimes, victory means passing through several decades without allowing the industry to take away your self-respect. And the next woman has done that for more than 60 years, always appearing with humor and opinions that could divide an entire room. Number 7. Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine entered the film industry with The Trouble with Harry in 1955 and quickly revealed a style no one else could copy. In The Apartment, she combined humor, loneliness, and despair in a character who initially seemed lighthearted. Years later, Terms of Endearment earned Shirley an Academy Award and strengthened her position as an actress who could make audiences laugh before breaking their hearts. Shirley never tried to hide her age by turning herself into a frozen version of the past. Her red hair became silver, and her features changed, but her mischievous energy remained. She also became known for unusual spiritual beliefs, from reincarnation to experiences that went beyond conventional explanation. Some people admired her, and others mocked her, but Shirley never built her life around the approval of the crowd. At an age when most performers had already left the stage, she continued accepting roles, writing books, and making public appearances. Not because she defeated time, but because she never considered time an enemy. But the next actress's memory gave time an entirely different meaning. Mary Lou Henner can remember nearly every day of her life, including memories that many people would probably prefer to forget. Number 6. Mary Lou Henner. Mary Lou Henner became famous as Elaine Nardo on Taxi, a television series that brought together an extraordinary group of comedy performers in the late 1970s. Her red hair, bright eyes, and seemingly endless energy helped Mary Lou stand out among the show's powerful personalities. But her most unusual gift was not related to acting. She possesses highly superior autobiographical memory, commonly known by the abbreviation HSAM. Mary Lou can remember dates, weather events, and countless details from her personal life going back several decades. Something that sounds like a superpower can also carry a heavy burden, because painful memories do not fade as easily as they do for most people. She turned that ability into an educational tool, participating in research and writing books about health, memory, and lifestyle. Instead of allowing the past to overwhelm her, Mary Lou learned how to organize it. As she grew older, she maintained her lively energy and continued appearing on television. Mary Lou's story is not about forgetting the years that have passed, but about learning how to live with them. And the next actress also carries her history on her face, while refusing to let anyone alter the style that made her unique. Number 5. Diane Keaton. Diane Keaton never needed a tight dress to become a fashion icon. In Annie Hall, she appeared in suits, ties, loose pants, and hats that the entire world began to imitate. The role earned Diane an Academy Award and transformed her awkwardness, intelligence, and humor into a cinematic language of her own. No one looks like Diane Keaton because she has never tried to look like anyone else. Over time, her hair became silver, her glasses grew larger, and her style became even more distinctive. Diane did not try to erase the signs of age from her public image. She continued acting, writing books, producing projects, and sharing her passion for architecture. In an industry that constantly asks women to reshape themselves to fit a mold, Diane turned her differences into the foundation of her entire career. What I love most about this story is its consistency. She did not wake up at 70 and suddenly decide to live honestly. She had been doing it from the beginning. But not everyone can maintain that kind of control. Heather Locklear was once the golden face of television before her private crises were repeatedly recorded by police officers' cameras and tabloid headlines. Number 4. Heather Locklear. In Dynasty, Heather Locklear entered a world of diamonds, power, and family schemes with radiant blonde hair and a perfect smile. Later, Melrose Place transformed her into Amanda Woodward, a woman who could control an entire office with a single look. Heather was not simply famous. She became an icon of primetime television, representing the glamorous beauty of the late 20th century. But in later years, issues involving alcohol, medication, mental health, and legal trouble repeatedly appeared in the news. Multiple periods of treatment, emergency calls, and incidents at her home completely changed the way the public viewed Heather. The sad part was that every new crisis was presented by the media like another episode of entertainment, even though this was the real life of a person who needed help. Heather gradually reduced her acting work to focus on recovery and taking care of herself. Her face today carries the marks of both time and difficult years, but it also shows a calmness that did not exist in her old photographs. While Heather had to rebuild her life after public headlines, Sally Field spent her entire career breaking out of the sweet and harmless box Hollywood had tried to place her inside. Number 3. Sally Field. Sally Field began her career with Gidget and the Flying Nun roles that made her beloved, but also caused many people to see her only as an adorable television girl. Sally understood that this image could become a professional prison. She fought for more challenging roles and eventually won 2 Academy Awards for Norma Ray and Places in the Heart, proving that her small frame could never limit her power as an actress. Away from the screen, Sally experienced periods of depression, the pressures of being a single mother, and the feeling that she constantly had to prove her value. She also publicly shared painful experiences from her younger years, showing that a familiar smile did not mean a life without trauma. As she grew older, Sally refused to chase an ageless image. Her silver hair and natural features became part of her mature beauty. Sally continued playing complex characters rather than disappearing into roles as gentle mothers. She showed that age does not weaken sincerity. It only makes sincerity harder to fake. But the woman in the next position spent decades caught between art and political controversy, while openly admitting things that most of Hollywood tried to hide. Number 2. Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda was once the seductive Barbarella before becoming an Academy Award-winning actress through Clute and Coming Home. She continued reinventing herself through workout videos, social activism, and television roles later in life. Her high cheekbones, athletic figure, and confidence made Jane an image that generations of women both admired and felt pressured to match. Jane's anti-war activism and political positions created intense controversy and influenced the way part of the public viewed her entire career. Regarding her appearance, Jane never denied undergoing certain cosmetic procedures. She openly said that she wanted to feel more confident, but she also acknowledged the contradiction of promoting acceptance of aging while trying to change some of its visible signs. What makes Jane different is not perfection. It is her ability to admit contradiction and continue changing. She still acts exercises and participates in causes she believes in, even though she knows the controversy will never completely disappear. But none of the stories so far can prepare us for the final position. Demi Moore did not only battle aging or the media. She faced a broken childhood, 3 marriages, and a relapse that nearly destroyed her family. Number 1. Demi Moore. In 2011, Demi Moore fell apart when Ashton Kutcher admitted that he had been unfaithful. That betrayal awakened a fear of abandonment that had followed her since childhood. Demi grew up in an unstable family, moved more than 30 times, and had a biological father who left before she was born, while both her mother and stepfather struggled with alcoholism. She experienced serious trauma, had dyslexia, underwent eye surgery, and dropped out of school at 16 to support herself. Demi first became famous through General Hospital, but she struggled with alcohol and drugs. Her role in St. Elmo's Fire forced her to enter treatment and become sober, opening the way for the success of Ghost. In 1996, she became the highest-paid actress in Hollywood with Striptease. Demi married Bruce Willis, had 3 daughters, and although they divorced, they remained friends and continued raising their children together. In 2003, Demi met Ashton Kutcher and married him 2 years later. Losing a pregnancy and experiencing several failed fertility treatments pushed her into deep grief, renewed alcohol use, and dependence on pain medication. When the marriage collapsed amid allegations of betrayal, Demi's condition became even more serious. In 2012, she required emergency medical treatment and entered rehabilitation, while her 3 daughters temporarily cut off contact because of the pain their mother had caused them. The turning point came when Demi and her daughters attended therapy together, confronted the past, and rebuilt trust. She listened to the ways they had been hurt without defending herself or placing blame elsewhere. Demi also continued supporting Bruce Willis and his new family as his health declined. After 3 marriages, a lost pregnancy, relapse, and separation from her family, she understood that the most important lesson was learning how to love herself without abandoning herself. Looking back at the entire list today, I realized that time was never the real villain. Wrinkles did not destroy these women. Gray hair did not erase their talent. What caused the damage was the pressure to remain forever identical to an earlier version of themselves. Judgments disguised as concern, and an industry that often loved an image more than the human being living inside. When you are dealing with mental health problems, substance dependence, or the feeling that you are losing control, do not wait until your life becomes a public crisis before seeking help. Speak with someone you trust, find an appropriate professional, and understand that receiving treatment is not a sign of weakness. It is the action of someone who still believes that their future deserves to be protected. And do not allow photographs on the internet to convince you that aging is something shameful. No one lives without changing. No one can keep the same face, the same body, or the same place beneath the lights forever. What we can preserve is our self-respect, our honesty, and our ability to repair the things we once did wrong. That is a kind of beauty no surgery could ever create. Which woman moved you the most or changed your perspective? Leave her name in the comments and share what you learned from her story. Do not forget to hit like, subscribe to Hollywood Stars and Scars, and turn on notifications so you never miss the secrets, tragedies, and untold stories hidden behind Hollywood's glamorous spotlight. Thank you for staying until the very end. Take care of yourself. Show kindness to people who may be fighting battles we cannot see. And remember that a human being is always greater than the worst photograph ever taken of them. I will see you again in the next video when we continue walking beyond the glittering lights to uncover the truths Hollywood once tried to keep in the dark. How quickly can $33 million disappear? For many Hollywood stars, a few bad contracts, poor investment decisions, overlooked tax obligations, and a lavish lifestyle were enough to turn mansions, luxury cars, and entire fortunes into bankruptcy filings. But behind those numbers was more than reckless spending. There were illnesses, lawsuits, financial advisors, guardians, and contracts beyond their control. Some had to sell everything they owned, go to prison, or work for the rest of their lives just to reclaim their own future. So who burned through hundreds of millions of dollars, who had their assets controlled by their own family, and who paid for tax-related mistakes with their freedom? Trust me, the closer we get to number 1, the darker these stories become. We begin with a man who once made all of America dance to a single song, before the doors of his mansion began closing one by one.
Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars.
Number 10. MC Hammer. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, MC Hammer was not simply a rapper. He was a cultural phenomenon. His signature baggy pants, powerful dance moves, and the hit "You Can't Touch This" turned Stanley Burrell into one of the most recognizable faces in America. A Hammer performance did not feel like an ordinary concert. It looked more like a massive circus, powered by music, lights, dancers, and what seemed like an endless supply of money. At the height of his success, Hammer's fortune was estimated at around $33 million. Yet by 1996, he had filed for bankruptcy with reported debts of approximately $13 million. Oh my God, this was not a minor stumble after his glory days. It was a straight drop. The public had once seen a man who could buy almost anything. Now, they were reading his name in articles about creditors, taxes, and overdue payments. Number 6. Janice Dickinson. $12 million. It included lavish amenities, but the cost of the house was only part of the story. He also maintained a staff of more than 200 people, including dancers, employees, friends, and members of the community he wanted to support. For Hammer, it was not entirely about showing off. He later explained that much of the money had been invested in people and in dreams he believed in. The problem was that generosity could not replace a sustainable financial system. When music sales declined, the massive operations surrounding Hammer still had to be paid. His business ventures did not produce the results he had expected. Copyright disputes emerged, while problems with tax authorities added even more pressure. Each problem on its own might not have been enough to sink him, but when they all arrived together, they became a wave he could not withstand. Many people mocked Hammer and turned him into a symbol of uncontrolled spending. I understand why the public reacted that way, but his story was more complicated than one mansion or a few expensive possessions. Part of his fortune was used to support a career that had grown too large. Another part was used to help people he did not want to leave behind. His intentions may have been kind, but numbers have no sympathy. After the collapse, Hammer did not disappear. He continued making music, became involved in technology, and devoted time to religious work. His life shows that bankruptcy does not necessarily have to be the end, but it also leaves behind a clear warning. When fame slows down, living expenses do not automatically slow down with it. And if you think supporting more than 200 employees was too much, the next person had to fight both unfavorable contracts and a body that would no longer allow her to keep earning money. Number 9. Toni Braxton. I can't perform, and performing is how I make my living. That statement makes Toni Braxton's story far more heartbreaking than the simple bankruptcy headlines suggested. Toni did not lose money only because of shopping. She also had to watch the most valuable tool in her career, her own health, become unreliable. When a singer cannot step onto a stage, an entire financial plan can collapse after only a few canceled shows. Toni's deep, smooth, and emotionally vulnerable voice created love songs that became inseparable from the musical memory of the 1990s. Unbreak My Heart turned her into a global R&B icon. She sold tens of millions of records, appeared in glamorous dresses, and received prestigious awards. From the outside, Toni seemed to have everything an artist could ever dream of. However, her early recording contract reportedly left her with far less in royalties than the public imagined. This is one of the music industry's most painful secrets. An album can sell millions of copies, but the artist may still have to repay production, promotion, music video, and other expenses before seeing any real profit. Toni's fame was far greater than the amount of money she could freely use. Toni also admitted that she once loved shopping and became drawn to luxury items. That made it easy for the public to conclude that she had simply spent too much. But then her health turned a difficult situation into something almost impossible to solve. She was diagnosed with serious medical conditions, including lupus and heart-related illness. Performances had to be canceled, profitable opportunities disappeared, and medical expenses continued to arrive regularly. She filed for bankruptcy twice, a shocking number for someone who had once stood at the top of the charts. Public reaction was divided. Some blamed her for lacking discipline. Others recognized that illness can bring down an entire empire, especially when income depends on the ability to perform live. What I respect is that Toni did not pretend everything was still perfect. She spoke openly about struggles that many stars usually try to hide. Toni returned through private performances, acting, and the reality show Braxton Family Values. She turned her family, her honesty, and the fractures in her own life into a new chapter in her career. But Toni's case still raises an uncomfortable question. An artist can become famous enough for the entire world to recognize her voice. So why can she still be so vulnerable to one contract and one medical diagnosis? The next story shows that even an Oscar cannot protect its owner from a tax bill. Number 8. Nicolas Cage. At one point, Nicolas Cage owned things that sounded more like a list of props from an adventure movie than the personal assets of an actor. European castles, a private island, luxury homes, rare cars, and even a dinosaur skull once appeared in his collection. Cage did not spend money like an ordinary celebrity. He spent money like a movie character, trying to build his own world in real life. That contrast is exactly what makes this story so difficult to believe. Nicolas Cage is an Oscar winner and the star of Leaving Las Vegas, Face/Off, National Treasure, and many other major films. At the height of his career, he received enormous paychecks and could choose from numerous major projects. But by the end of the 2000s, his name was appearing on more than movie posters. It was also appearing in reports about approximately $14 million in unpaid federal taxes. Cage claims that his business manager had made poor decisions and failed to properly warn him about his financial condition. His former manager argued that the actor's spending habits were the main cause. The truth was probably buried in a complicated network of enormous spending, asset management, taxes, and investments that were difficult to maintain. What is certain is that Cage believed his money-making machine could run forever. When the crisis erupted, he began selling assets. Houses, collectibles, and many possessions that had reflected Cage's unusual personal style gradually left his hands. The dinosaur skull was later returned after reports suggested that it had been illegally removed from Mongolia, although Cage was not accused of knowing its origin when he purchased it. That detail sounds almost absurd, but it perfectly fits a period when his real life was as strange as any movie. Cage then began accepting roles at a pace that stunned critics. In some years, he appeared constantly in films of widely varying quality. The public mocked those choices and claimed that he had lost his artistic standards. But Cage admitted that many of those jobs were accepted because of financial obligations. I see it differently. Instead of running away or declaring bankruptcy, he chose to work, repay his debts, and endure all the ridicule that came with it. Over time, Cage paid off his financial obligations and regained respect through highly praised performances. That comeback did not erase his mistakes, but it proved that persistence can sometimes rebuild both a reputation and a fortune. However, Nicolas Cage at least still had the ability to work and save himself. The next man earned around $300 million, but chaos in his personal life made even the power of a heavyweight champion seem helpless. Number 7. Mike Tyson. In 2003, Mike Tyson filed for bankruptcy. I have to repeat that slowly because the number behind it is almost impossible to believe. During his boxing career, Tyson was estimated to have earned around $300 million. $300 million! Yet, the man who once made opponents tremble before the opening bell could not defeat his debts, tax bills, legal expenses, and a lifestyle with no limits. Poverty and instability in Brooklyn. While still very young, he was introduced to boxing and quickly became a phenomenon. At the age of 20, Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history. His cold stare, terrifying speed, and explosive power made him one of the most famous athletes on the planet. A single fight could earn him tens of millions of dollars, making money seem almost meaningless. And expensive gifts followed. Tyson even kept Bengal tigers, a choice that sounded powerful but came with enormous care expenses. A large group of people surrounded him, while parties and impulsive decisions continued draining money from his accounts. Tyson later admitted that he lived with the belief that the money would never run out. It was a very expensive illusion. Tyson went through costly divorces, legal disputes, time in prison, and problems related to substance use while his career was interrupted. His financial obligations did not stop. Think about the irony. A man who could end a fight in seconds took years to realize that his most dangerous battle was happening outside the ring, inside contracts and habits he barely controlled. Some people said Tyson had destroyed everything himself. That was not entirely wrong. But it is also important to remember that he entered a world of enormous wealth at a very young age, after a childhood that gave him almost no opportunity to learn emotional or financial management. Hollywood and professional sports are very good at creating young millionaires, but they do not always prepare them to survive after the applause ends. Business ventures, and public appearances. He now speaks about his mistakes with a level of honesty that his younger self may never have possessed. His story does not make him a complete victim, nor does it make him a permanent failure. It shows that a person can be responsible for their choices while still deserving an opportunity to change. And in the next position, beauty that once dominated the runway could not hide bills totaling more than $1 million. Number 6. Janice Dickinson. It's not the end of the world. I was born to work. Janice Dickinson spoke about her difficulties in the same style that made her famous: direct, loud, and unwilling to bow her head. When her 2013 bankruptcy filing revealed debts of more than $1 million, Janice did not hide from the cameras. She looked directly at the humiliation Hollywood often forces women to conceal. One of the world's most prominent models. Her sharp features, dark hair, and defiant attitude helped her stand out during an era when the fashion industry still favored a fairly safe image. Janice later called herself the world's first supermodel. That title was controversial, but no one could deny that she created a powerful, unforgettable image that was ahead of its time. High earnings are often concentrated within a short period, while the pressure to maintain a certain appearance can last for decades. For Janice, expenses related to cosmetic procedures became a significant part of her financial problems. Her reported debts included unpaid bills owed to cosmetic doctors and several other creditors. The appearance that once created her wealth had now become an expense that kept growing. The industry demands that they remain young forever, then mocks them for trying to hold on to their youth. Janice was criticized for her appearance, and then criticized again for the money she spent trying to change it. She was certainly responsible for her financial choices, but the system that created the fear of aging was not completely innocent either. Including America's Next Top Model and Celebrity Rehab. She spoke about her life with an honesty that sometimes made listeners uncomfortable. Some people believed she was using her crisis to remain in the spotlight. I believe that openness broke through one layer of the entertainment industry's false image. Famous people also have bills, mistakes, and mornings when they wake up without knowing how to repair their lives and facing the consequences directly. But her debt, although substantial, could not compare with what the next person was ordered to repay. That man did not simply lose his own money. He built his wealth through a fraudulent system that harmed countless investors, then became a cultural symbol through the very story of the actions that sent him to prison. Number 5. Jordan Belfort. DiCaprio. Jordan Belfort was the head of Stratton Oakmont, a brokerage firm that turned market manipulation into a money-making machine. The dark secret did not come after Belfort's career. It was the foundation of that career. The money, yachts, luxury cars, and endless parties were financed by the losses of investors pressured into buying through aggressive sales tactics. People. Stratton Oakmont drove up the prices of low-value stocks, sold them to clients, and profited before the prices collapsed. Employees were trained never to accept no for an answer. Over the phone, they were not simply selling stocks. They were selling the dream of wealth, while the people behind the system already knew who was most likely to win. Image of a man who had no fear of limits. He also became deeply involved in substance use, making decisions that were already dangerous, even more chaotic. Belfort later described his greed as an emptiness that could never be filled. The more he had, the more deprived he felt. That was when success turned into a form of endless hunger. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, served approximately 22 months, and was ordered to repay around $110 million to his victims. That number represented more than money. Behind it were savings, retirement plans, and the trust of people who believed the promises made by a professional voice on the other end of the phone. Memoir became the film The Wolf of Wall Street, bringing the lifestyle that had contributed to his crimes onto the screen with enormous appeal. Many viewers saw it as a warning, but others became fascinated by the parties, cash, and reckless behavior. Sometimes Hollywood tells stories about downfall in such an entertaining way that audiences forget the people who were harmed. By retelling the actions that once destroyed other people's lives? I do not think there is an easy answer. What matters is that wrongdoing should not become an accessory to fame. And if this story makes you angry, the next one will make you sad, in a completely different way. Because Gary Coleman may have lost most of his money before he was old enough to understand where his fortune was going. Number 4, Gary Coleman. Loved Arnold Jackson on Different Strokes, a financial battle was quietly developing away from the set. Gary once earned millions of dollars from acting. By 1999, he had filed for bankruptcy. The contrast between the famous boy on television and the man struggling with medical expenses is one of the most painful stories involving a child star. Life. Medication and health problems affected his physical development, leaving him with a small stature even as an adult. That characteristic helped create the memorable image of Arnold, but it also trapped Gary in a particular type of role and left him with medical costs that outsiders rarely saw. And the screen made him the heart of the show. But a child earning money does not mean that child controls the money. Gary's assets were managed by adults, and years later, he discovered that much of what he believed would protect his future was no longer there as expected. But the battle left deep emotional wounds. Imagine having to enter a courtroom and fight the very people who had been trusted to protect you. Betrayal in a situation like that does more than take away money. It destroys a person's ability to trust. At one point, he had to organize fundraising efforts related to medical expenses. The public remembered him as an adorable boy, but Gary had to grow older in a world that did not want to update its image of him. Hollywood had made money from that childhood, then seemed unable to decide what to do with the adult behind the character. Protecting the earnings of child actors, transparency in guardianship, and parental responsibility. In my opinion, this is where the list stops being only about rich people spending money badly. It becomes a story about power. The next person also earned more than $200 million. But generosity, a large entourage, and a lack of preparation for life after sports pulled him into another financial crisis. Number 3, Allen Iverson. He was not tall by NBA standards, but his speed, toughness, and scoring ability forced even the strongest defenders to back away. Off the court, Iverson changed the culture of the league through streetwear, tattoos, braided hair, and an attitude that refused to conform. To millions of fans, he was more than a player. He was the voice of defiance. And endorsement deals. That number made reports of his financial difficulties after leaving the NBA difficult to understand. How could someone who earned so much struggle with cash? The answer was not found in a single purchase. It was found in thousands of smaller decisions repeated over many years, from jewelry and luxury cars to a large entourage. Even an NBA salary can disappear quickly. The lifestyle built during the peak years continued after his income declined. That is a trap many athletes face. They retire from competition while still relatively young, but must finance their lives for many more decades. Some criticized him for being irresponsible. Others pointed to his impoverished childhood and the fact that he suddenly entered a world of wealth without receiving proper financial education. Iverson admitted that he had made mistakes, but he also rejected some stories claiming that he was completely broke. Widely reported information, a trust worth approximately $30 million was established for him to access after reaching a certain age in 2030. If the arrangement operates as publicly described, it serves as a barrier, protecting his future from decisions made in the past. It is something rare on this list. A lifeboat secured before the ship entered the storm. Influence. His story is a reminder that a high income does not guarantee lasting wealth. Money only remains when there is a plan, clear limits, and advisors courageous enough to say no. But at least Iverson did not gamble millions of dollars on purchasing part of a town. The next person did exactly that, and was then pushed toward bankruptcy by a movie lawsuit. Number 2, Kim Basinger of Braselton, Georgia, in a deal reportedly valued by the media at around $20 million. That is correct. Not a house or a resort, but property spread across an entire town. Her plan was to transform the area into a tourist destination and film production center. On paper, it sounded like a bold dream. In reality, it gradually became an enormous financial burden. Eyes made her a screen icon. Her role as Vicky Vale in Batman introduced Kim to audiences around the world. She had the appeal of an old-fashioned movie star, while also carrying the vulnerability needed for complex characters. Hollywood loved her, magazines pursued her, and her future seemed limitless. But the Braselton project did not develop as planned. Transforming a large area into an entertainment center required more capital infrastructure and patience. When profits failed to appear quickly enough, the property that had once represented her ambition began draining money. However, the more serious blow came from the movie Boxing Helena. Kim had agreed to join the project, but later withdrew, leading to a breach of contract lawsuit. A jury initially ruled that Kim and her company were responsible for paying millions of dollars in damages. Although the decision later went through appeals and changes, the financial pressure had already become overwhelming. In 1993, Kim filed for bankruptcy protection. Surprisingly, the woman who appeared in movies that earned hundreds of millions of dollars had to sell assets to deal with the consequences of a project she never completed. Braselton was later sold for far less than the original investment. The press described the story as an example of ambition exceeding reality. But Kim did not leave the film industry. She continued working, and several years later won an Oscar for her performance in LA Confidential. It was a remarkable comeback. She had lost part of her fortune, but she did not allow financial failure to completely define her artistic ability. Kim once said that people have to learn from their mistakes, no matter how publicly those mistakes happen. I think that is one of the hardest parts of fame. An ordinary person can fail quietly. A star fails in front of millions of people and must continue walking down red carpets as though everything is fine. But the final position is even darker. Wesley Snipes did not simply lose money and temporarily damage his reputation. He lost his freedom after years of failing to fully meet his tax obligations. Number 1. Wesley Snipes. A man wearing a long black coat and dark glasses while killing vampires became one of the most memorable action images of the late 1990s. Wesley Snipes in Blade did more than save the world on screen. He also helped prove that a superhero movie led by a black actor could become a major success. But away from the cameras, another confrontation was developing, and this time, his fighting skills could not help him escape federal tax law. Snipes was once one of Hollywood's highest-paid action stars. From New Jack City and White Men Can't Jump to Demolition Man and the Blade franchise, he combined agility, charisma, and a rare sense of cool confidence. He could perform comedy, drama, and action, showing a much broader range than the warrior image the public usually remembers. Millions of dollars flowed in during the brightest years of his career. A single incision is all it takes to erase a masterpiece. In an empire built on the illusion of flawless perfection, the desperate chase for eternal youth frequently ends on a cold, unforgiving operating table. We're unsealing the classified medical records behind the most devastating Hollywood scandals, serving as a definitive archive that exposes the brutal price of extreme vanity. This is Hollywood Stars and Scars. But before we dissect the fading idols who surgically stripped away their own identities, we must confront the ultimate cautionary tale. How did the most photographed woman of the decade walk into a VIP clinic as a global icon, only to emerge completely unrecognizable? And why did the media seamlessly orchestrate her sudden disappearance?
Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars.
Number 20. Pierce Brosnan and Keely Shea Smith. Pierce Brosnan was the ultimate symbol of cinematic sophistication, dominating the global box office as an untouchable Hollywood icon. Camera flashes captured a flawless leading man, walking endless red carpets in perfectly tailored suits, projecting an aura of elite, manufactured perfection. He was the industry's golden standard, completely insulated from the destructive reality of tabloid culture. Those same flashbulbs quickly transformed into weapons, aiming directly at his private sanctuary. When his wife Keely Shea Smith experienced natural physical changes, the media machine launched a ruthless campaign of public scrutiny. Relentless paparazzi documented her every move, attempting to shatter their protected image with endless streams of cruel public commentary regarding her weight gain. Defying the intense PR panic to curate a more cosmetically acceptable aesthetic, he fiercely defended their union against a system obsessed with superficiality. The reality of this situation exposed a toxic ecosystem where a spouse's physical appearance was treated as public property. Tabloid headlines relentlessly framed them as a mismatched pairing of a superstar and an allegedly unattractive wife, feeding the insatiable public hunger for controversy. Industry insiders watched as the couple navigated this invasive media storm, refusing to bend to a town that demands artificial flawlessness. True loyalty remains the one rare luxury that Hollywood's glittering machine can never quite afford to purchase. Number 19. Hugh Jackman and Deborah Lee Furness. Hugh Jackman stood as the undisputed powerhouse of the global box office, a glittering weapon of pure charisma and physical perfection. Flashbulbs worshipped his every move as he conquered massive blockbuster franchises, forging an immaculate public brand. He was the ultimate leading man, carefully packaged by a studio system, demanding absolute visual flawlessness. Behind the blinding glow of premiere nights, a vicious media narrative quietly sharpened its blades against his private reality. The relentless surveillance state fixed its gaze on his marriage to a woman 12 years his senior, weaponizing her aging process for mass consumption. Predatory paparazzi targeted her sun-damaged skin, eagerly feeding an engineered controversy that categorized their union under degrading internet lists about stars settling for less. Navigating this devastating PR crisis required a delicate war against an audience desperate to see the illusion crack. While observers calculated the potential damage to his curated sex symbol status, he refused to let the toxic machinery dismantle his sanctuary. Defying overwhelming pressure to hide his spouse, he consistently used his massive platform to broadcast her profound resilience. This endless barrage of invasive scrutiny exposed a deeply fractured ecosystem, treating natural appearance as an unforgivable public offense. True love in this brutal town is often forced to wear heavy emotional armor just to survive the superficial glare of the spotlight. Number 18. Jesse Williams and Erin Drake Lee. Jesse Williams emerged as a flawless television heartthrob, commanding massive primetime audiences and generating blinding arrays of paparazzi flashes on every sprawling red carpet. His public image was anchored by a striking physical magnetism, instantly elevating him to the elite ranks of Hollywood's most coveted leading men. He was marketed as the ultimate romantic ideal, shielded by a highly profitable personal brand. Before this manufactured glamour took hold, Erin Drake Lee served as the unshakable financial architect of his early, struggling career. However, the moment his superstar status crystallized, an invasive media narrative aggressively pivoted to dissect their deeply private sanctuary. The press began actively weaponizing her natural appearance against his meticulously curated on-screen persona. Tabloid headlines ruthlessly categorized their marriage under degrading digital lists, openly questioning why a universally desired star remained tethered to a spouse deemed outside the industry's rigid beauty standards. This devastating public scrutiny subjected an authentic partnership to relentless pressure, framing a fiercely loyal wife as an inexplicable PR anomaly that needed justification. Industry insiders watched the ruthless Hollywood machine attempt to invalidate a genuine union simply because it defied the studio system's shallow visual optics. In an ecosystem obsessed with superficial perfection, authentic devotion becomes the first tragic casualty of a culture that refuses to look beyond the surface. Number 17. Clive Owen and Sarah Jane Fenton. Clive Owen dominated the silver screen as an intensely brooding cinematic force, projecting an aura of rugged, untouchable sophistication. He secured his status as a premier leading man, navigating exclusive red carpets in sharp tuxedos, while studios relentlessly marketed him as an elite, universally desired icon. This carefully constructed commercial identity demanded absolute compliance with the industry's rigid aesthetic metrics. That perfectly manufactured illusion fractured when a toxic media narrative aggressively targeted his deeply private marriage to Sarah Jane Fenton. Tabloid machinery gleefully dissected her natural appearance, cruelly noting she failed to align with traditional Hollywood standards of manufactured attractiveness. Vicious internet lists and predatory publications capitalized on this controversy, categorizing their union under degrading rankings of superstars attached to allegedly ugly wives. Confronting a devastating PR crisis designed to humiliate his family, the acclaimed actor categorically refused to participate in the destruction of his own sanctuary. He publicly condemned the brutal scrutiny surrounding her facial expressions, fiercely defending her character by declaring her an absolute diamond. Industry insiders observed a rare, defiant stand against an ecosystem that treats a partner's physical appearance as a depreciating public commodity. In a ruthless town engineered to worship disposable perfection, enduring devotion is treated not as a triumph, but as an unforgivable aesthetic crime. Number 16. Aaron Taylor Johnson and Sam Taylor Johnson. Aaron Taylor Johnson exploded onto the cinematic landscape as a breathtaking amalgamation of raw talent and physical magnetism, swiftly securing his position as a blockbuster heavyweight. Studio executives capitalized on his striking perfection, aggressively maneuvering him across global press tours and exclusive red carpets as the industry's next great obsession. He embodied the definitive modern leading man, commanding a polished commercial brand that seemed entirely bulletproof. That flawless public armor fractured when an invasive media spotlight pivoted to dissect his fiercely guarded domestic reality. A sprawling 23-year age gap between the actor and his director wife, Sam Taylor Johnson, ignited a devastating crisis engineered by merciless tabloid culture. Vicious publications weaponized their union, dragging her into degrading digital ecosystems and cruel rankings, mocking male superstars tethered to spouses deemed visually unacceptable by shallow standards. The resulting fallout transforms a private romance into a terrifying public spectacle, unleashing a relentless barrage of severe ageism and horrifying death threats aimed directly at a filmmaker. Rather than surrender to a machine demanding conformity to artificial metrics, the couple barricaded their family behind an impenetrable wall of fierce loyalty. They consciously chose to endure intense psychological warfare to protect their sanctuary. In a ruthless kingdom built on disposable youth and manufactured illusions, an unyielding marriage remains the most dangerous act of Hollywood rebellion. Number 15. Paul Rudd and Julie Yeager. Paul Rudd cemented his legacy as a cinematic anomaly, navigating decades of blockbuster fame with an uncanny ageless magnetism. Flashbulbs illuminated a universally beloved leading man who seemed entirely immune to the passage of time, projecting an aura of effortless perfection across every sprawling red carpet. He represented a studio's ultimate dream, a flawless, perpetually youthful commercial powerhouse. That pristine public narrative eventually triggered a devastating media backlash, directed squarely at his fiercely protected domestic life. When tabloids aimed their aggressive lenses at his wife, Julie Yeager, a predatory comparison emerged. Publications ruthlessly weaponized her natural evolution, subjecting her to a relentless stream of invasive commentary that unfavorably contrasted her appearance against his heavily marketed refusal to age. A deeply authentic partnership was systematically dragged into the toxic depths of superficial internet culture. Heartless digital ecosystems categorized their union under degrading engineered lists targeting superstars attached to wives deemed visually unworthy by the public. Industry observers watched this destructive cycle of fame attempt to invalidate a loyal spouse, treating her organic existence as an inexplicable PR crisis. Rather than surrender to a machine demanding absolute conformity, the couple silently barricaded their sanctuary against the relentless scrutiny. In an empire obsessed with frozen perfection, natural humanity is often penalized as the ultimate aesthetic failure. Number 14. John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. John Legend captivated the globe as a musical powerhouse, weaving an impeccable public narrative built on soulful elegance and universal adoration. Flanked by his vibrant supermodel wife, the duo conquered high-profile premiere nights, projecting an untouchable image of modern Hollywood royalty. Their meticulously curated aesthetic represented a highly profitable commercial empire, cementing them as the industry's premier aspirational romance. That pristine branding violently fractured when the media apparatus turned its predatory focus onto Chrissy Teigen's postpartum reality. Following the birth of their children, a merciless wave of public scrutiny targeted her natural physical evolution, ruthlessly dissecting her changing silhouette. Vicious digital ecosystems quickly weaponized her vulnerability, dragging their union into degrading digital lists that categorized male superstars alongside partners deemed visually inadequate by the public. Endless tabloid headlines amplified the cruelty, heavily criticizing a mother as overweight, while fueling intense allegations regarding irreversible cosmetic procedures. Navigating this devastating PR crisis required the acclaimed musician to shield his family from a hostile audience demanding constant visual flawlessness. The relentless judgment surrounding her appearance exposed a deeply toxic cycle of fame, where organic human transformations are penalized as unacceptable aesthetic failures. Industry insiders observed the couple weather an agonizing media storm that relentlessly sought to dismantle their highly publicized bond. A glittering red carpet offers no true sanctuary when a superficial ecosystem weaponizes natural motherhood to shatter a carefully curated illusion. Number 13. Tony Goldwyn and Jane Michelle Muskie. Tony Goldwyn commanded the screen with aristocratic intensity, securing his position as a highly coveted Hollywood elite. Cameras documented a quintessential leading man wrapped in tailored elegance, broadcasting an aura of undeniable authority. His commercial identity was meticulously engineered by a studio apparatus that valued aesthetic perfection, positioning him as a flawless symbol of cinematic power. The blinding glare of manufactured stardom fractured when tabloid syndicates aggressively turned their focus toward his private sanctuary. As he walked high-profile red carpets with his wife, Jane Michelle Muskie, vicious media outlets launched a coordinated assault on her personal style and natural appearance. Relentless digital ecosystems weaponized their age dynamic, unleashing a wave of humiliating commentary that cruelly compared an accomplished spouse to a maternal figure. This devastating PR crisis exposed a toxic facet of celebrity culture that actively punishes authenticity. Vicious publications callously dragged their enduring union into degrading online rankings, categorizing a universally recognized star alongside partners deemed visually inadequate by a superficial public. Instead of capitulating to an industry demanding absolute conformity, he shielded his deeply private marriage against a relentless barrage of manufactured outrage. In an ecosystem engineered to worship artificial youth, maintaining a genuine human connection is treated as an unforgivable aesthetic crime. The Hollywood illusion demands a superficial sacrifice that true loyalty refuses to pay. Number 12. Omari Hardwick and Jennifer Fauch. Omari Hardwick commanded the modern television landscape as a force of raw intensity and undeniable magnetism. Camera flashes documented an impeccably tailored leading man conquering exclusive red carpets, projecting an aura of absolute dominance. He was heavily marketed as a universally desired powerhouse, insulated by a carefully curated commercial empire demanding absolute visual perfection. The pristine public armor shattered when a virulent faction of his own fanbase launched a predatory assault on his interracial marriage to Jennifer Fauch. A devastating wave of digital harassment mercilessly targeted her natural appearance, maliciously dragging their union into degrading internet directories that catalog celebrities attached to wives deemed unappealing. This severe PR crisis weaponized racist vitriol, attempting to publicly humiliate a loyal partner who failed to align with the industry's shallow aesthetic metrics. Confronted by this terrifying collapse of basic decency, the actor categorically refused to issue sanitized deflections. He aggressively counterattacked the toxic narrative, fiercely defending his spouse and openly castigating an audience that felt entitled to dictate his personal sanctuary. The resulting fallout exposed a deeply fractured ecosystem where a star must battle his own supporters to protect his home. When an entitled audience weaponizes their adoration, the glittering illusion of Hollywood success becomes a suffocating trap. Number 11. David Beckham and Victoria Beckham. David Beckham reigned supreme as an international sports titan, seamlessly transitioning into a highly lucrative global brand. Paparazzi lenses documented a spectacularly glamorous existence alongside his fashion mogul wife, projecting an aura of unmatched elite sophistication. They were aggressively marketed as the ultimate aspirational pairing, commanding sprawling red carpets wrapped in absolute visual perfection. Beneath this carefully curated dynasty, a ruthless tabloid machinery actively sought to dismantle their polished reality. Predatory publications launched a relentless campaign targeting Victoria, aggressively weaponizing her slender frame to engineer a devastating PR crisis. Invasive magazines relentlessly branded her with severe medical labels, dissecting every public appearance to construct a narrative of physical fragility. The aggressive media ecosystem further penalized her heavily guarded persona, framing her deliberate refusal to smile as an unforgivable aesthetic offense. Heartless digital directories dragged their high-profile union into degrading rankings, comparing a universally desired superstar against a spouse subjected to endless mocking. Navigating this destructive cycle of fame forced the couple to build an impenetrable fortress around their private sanctuary. Industry insiders watched the couple endure this agonizing media storm, refusing to let public vitriol shatter their closely guarded empire. The ultimate cost of global royalty is surrendering your natural humanity to a superficial, unforgiving machine. The public pedestal is not a monument. It is a surveillance tower for predators. When an ecosystem relies on manufactured perfection, organic human evolution, aging, weight fluctuations, physical changes, is aggressively prosecuted as a visual crime. This relentless media scrutiny engineers a psychological war zone, stripping individuals of their basic right to exist authentically. A society obsessed with artificial aesthetics doesn't just damage specific targets, it normalizes mass cruelty, punishing genuine loyalty and penalizing natural human connection. Surviving this glaring machinery requires heavy emotional armor, yet the pressure continues to mount. Watch what happens when an entitled audience attempts to shatter the most fiercely guarded sanctuary. Number 10. Keanu Reeves and Alexandra Grant. Keanu Reeves operated as an untouchable cinematic deity, universally revered for his breathtaking resurgence as an action genre powerhouse. Cameras documented a profoundly solitary leading man, navigating global premieres with an aura of melancholic perfection, aggressively marketed to a devoted public. He was an immaculate anomaly, a beloved icon seemingly immune to the predatory nature of tabloid culture. That carefully guarded isolation shattered the moment he publicly debuted his romance with visual artist Alexandra Grant, igniting an extraordinarily vicious media backlash. A shallow public sphere instantly weaponized her natural gray hair and organic aging process, unleashing a devastating wave of intense digital scrutiny. The press systematically framed her aesthetic choices as an unforgivable offense, orchestrating a cruel narrative, deeming her physically unworthy of a global superstar. Vicious digital publications callously capitalized on this manufactured controversy, dragging their authentic partnership into degrading rankings, targeting male celebrities attached to allegedly ugly wives. Refusing to succumb to PR panic or hide his relationship from a hostile audience, he defiantly gripped her hand across every flashing red carpet. Industry insiders watched an unyielding display of loyalty disrupt a deeply toxic ecosystem engineered to punish those defying artificial standards. In a sterile kingdom desperate to freeze time, embracing natural humanity remains the most heavily penalized aesthetic betrayal. Number 9. Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan. Mark Zuckerberg built an untouchable digital empire, ascending to the absolute pinnacle of global wealth as a formidable technological titan. High-profile summits and endless media events documented a visionary leader projecting an aura of calculated dominance. His meticulously engineered public persona represented a modern dynasty shielded by immense fortune and unprecedented cultural influence. That formidable armor fractured when ruthless internet ecosystems aggressively targeted his deeply private marriage to Priscilla Chan. Toxic digital directories mercilessly cataloged their union under degrading lists mocking prominent male figures tethered to allegedly ugly wives. A devastating wave of online scrutiny relentlessly weaponized her bare-faced aesthetic and unassuming wardrobe, orchestrating a cruel narrative designed to humiliate a highly educated philanthropist for failing to meet shallow cosmetic standards. Facing a continuous barrage of digital harassment aimed at his family, the billionaire unequivocally refused to subject his sanctuary to artificial PR makeovers. He fiercely counterattacked the superficial vitriol, utilizing his massive platform to publicly declare his spouse his greatest living treasure. Watchers of this cultural phenomenon witnessed a deeply authentic partnership withstand a hostile public sphere that consistently penalizes unpolished reality. In a hollow ecosystem engineered to worship synthetic flawlessness, remaining fiercely loyal to an unvarnished human truth is the ultimate defiance. Number 8. Josh Holloway and Jessica Kumala. Josh Holloway skyrocketed to global superstardom as television's ultimate rugged heartthrob, anchoring a wildly successful survival drama. Flashing lenses immortalized a cinematic golden boy, crafting an inescapable narrative of peak masculine perfection. He was aggressively packaged as a universally desired fantasy, commanding an intensely devoted audience. That engineered idol status became a weapon when the spotlight forcefully turned toward his private marriage to Jessica Kumala. An overzealous, possessive fanbase launched a severe campaign of public scrutiny, attacking his partner of Indonesian descent for missing the industry's artificial beauty standards. Cruel digital ecosystems dragged their union into degrading directories, engineered to shame stars married to allegedly unattractive wives. Confronting a devastating PR crisis, fueled by superficial outrage, the actor completely rejected the toxic demands of his own supporters. He fiercely counterattacked the digital harassment, publicly declaring his wife as the only woman who captivated his attention. Observers witnessed a deeply authentic romance endure a brutal public gauntlet, exposing a fractured ecosystem where strangers attempt to dictate a star's domestic reality. Instead of sacrificing his sanctuary to appease an angry demographic, he built an impenetrable fortress of loyalty around his family. In a ruthless town designed to worship manufactured aesthetics, authentic devotion remains the ultimate defiance against a shallow audience. Number 7. Patrick Dempsey and Gillian Fink. Patrick Dempsey captivated primetime television as an unparalleled romantic ideal reigning over medical dramas with effortless magnetism. Cameras immortalized an impeccably groomed leading man, projecting a flawless narrative that secured his moniker as a modern-day prince. He was meticulously marketed as a global fantasy, shielded by a lucrative studio brand built on staggering heartthrob status. That manufactured perfection fractured when a venomous faction of his own viewership aggressively targeted his private marriage to Gillian Fink. An obsessive audience mercilessly dissected her natural signs of aging, weaponizing her authentic appearance against artificial industry standards. Cruel digital publications amplified this toxicity, dragging their union into degrading internet directories dedicated to humiliating superstars attached to wives deemed visually inadequate. Confronting a devastating PR crisis designed to shatter his sanctuary, the actor refused to let a superficial ecosystem dictate his reality. Instead of capitulating to relentless pressure, he actively countered the vitriol by publicly championing his spouse as the unyielding anchor behind his success. Observers watched a genuine partnership weather a severe digital gauntlet fueled by shallow public entitlement. Navigating this destructive cycle of fame forced the couple to barricade their bond against a machine that penalizes organic human evolution. In an industry deeply intoxicated by surgical illusions, choosing to proudly love an unvarnished reality remains an unforgivable act of treason. Number 6. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson. Tom Hanks solidified his reign as cinematic royalty, radiating an aura of universally trusted, affable perfection across generations of audiences. Flashbulbs endlessly captured the beloved leading man conquering prestigious red carpets, securely anchored by an untouchable studio reputation. He was the industry's ultimate golden compass, projecting an unblemished brand of moral and commercial invincibility. That monumental public affection curdled into invasive cruelty when a relentless media machine fixated on his fiercely guarded marriage. Following Rita Wilson's agonizing but victorious battle against severe illness, predatory digital ecosystems weaponized her physical recovery, heavily scrutinizing her changing silhouette and natural aging process. Malicious publications aggressively dragged their deeply respected union into a degrading internet directory, categorizing legendary superstars tethered to wives deemed visually unacceptable by shallow standards. Confronting a devastating PR crisis engineered by an entitled audience, the acclaimed actor categorically rejected the toxic demands of superficial celebrity culture. Instead of retreating into calculated studio silence, he aggressively counterattacked the digital vitriol, consistently broadcasting to the world that his resilient spouse remained his most captivating desire, an unyielding spiritual anchor. Observers watched a profound partnership weather a brutal public gauntlet, fueled by a society profoundly uncomfortable with unpolished human reality. In a sterile kingdom, desperate to worship manufactured illusions, honoring the physical toll of true survival remains Hollywood's most heavily penalized aesthetic betrayal. Number 5. Matt Damon and Luciana Barroso. Matt Damon commanded the industry as a quintessential A-list powerhouse, anchoring massive blockbuster franchises with effortless magnetism. Paparazzi documented a glittering cinematic heavyweight, navigating exclusive global premieres, carefully marketed as Hollywood's most bankable leading man. He projected a pristine commercial identity, safely insulated within a highly profitable bubble of manufactured elite perfection. That impenetrable armor cracked when ruthless tabloids pivoted their predatory focus toward his fiercely guarded romance with a former bartender and single mother, Luciana Barroso. Vicious media ecosystems weaponized her working-class background and unpolished natural aesthetic, aggressively framing her as too ordinary for cinematic royalty. Invasive digital publications dragged their union into degrading internet directories, categorizing a celebrated superstar alongside partners deemed visually inadequate by shallow industry metrics. Confronting a relentless PR crisis designed to humiliate his family, the actor categorically refused to sacrifice his sanctuary to appease an entitled audience. Instead of orchestrating artificial cosmetic makeovers to satisfy aggressive public scrutiny, he shielded their marriage behind an unyielding wall of fierce loyalty. Watchers witnessed a deeply authentic partnership quietly endure a brutal gauntlet fueled by a society uncomfortable with reality. Navigating this destructive cycle of fame forced a genuine romance to survive in the hostile shadows of an unforgiving spotlight. In an empire engineered to worship manufactured illusions, authentic devotion remains the ultimate aesthetic rebellion. Number 4. Christian Bale and Sibby Blazek. Christian Bale transformed into an unparalleled cinematic titan, anchoring a billion-dollar superhero franchise with terrifying intensity. Flashing cameras worshipped a critically acclaimed leading man whose brooding perfection defined an era of blockbusters. He was packaged as the ultimate Hollywood enigma, an elite force of nature, heavily insulated by unimaginable commercial power. This bulletproof mystique cracked when digital ecosystems unleashed an aggressive assault on his private marriage to Sibby Blazek. Superficial media outlets actively weaponized her understated wardrobe, mercilessly branding her red carpet presence as faded and unremarkable. Toxic publications cruelly dragged their union into a devastating internet directory, targeting the actor in a humiliating list ranking male superstars tethered to allegedly ugly wives. Refusing to surrender to a PR crisis engineered to humiliate his family, the notoriously intense actor categorically rejected the shallow demands of an entitled public. Instead of staging a cosmetic overhaul to appease his critics, he publicly credited his wife's silent sacrifices as the unyielding foundation of his cinematic empire. Industry veterans watched a deeply genuine partnership withstand a brutal media gauntlet fueled by a society eager to police female aesthetics. Shielding his domestic reality from this predatory machinery required him to build an impenetrable fortress around his loved ones. A studio system addicted to artificial perfection will always penalize those who choose unvarnished devotion over a superficial masterpiece. Number 3. Pharrell Williams and Helen Lasachan. Pharrell Williams defined the absolute vanguard of global pop culture, shaping an entire era of sound and style with ageless precision. Red carpets bowed to his magnetic presence as he conquered the music industry, projecting a flawless, heavily guarded brand of effortless cool. He operated as a visionary architect of modern celebrity, shielded by staggering chart-topping dominance and an untouchable commercial empire. That pristine, trend-setting illusion cracked when a vicious media apparatus targeted his deeply private union with Helen Lasachan. Invasive digital publications weaponized her unconventional height and avant-garde wardrobe, aggressively framing her aesthetic as a bizarre anomaly. toxic internet directories dragged their partnership into a degrading digital spotlight, categorizing a universally celebrated cultural icon alongside partners deemed visually unacceptable by rigid industry metrics. Confronting a devastating PR crisis designed to humiliate his family, the acclaimed producer vehemently refused to sanitize their reality to appease an entitled public. Instead of forcing his spouse into a conventional mold, he fiercely counterattacked the digital vitriol, publicly championing her eccentric style and singular personality as his ultimate inspiration. Observers watched an authentic romance weather a brutal media gauntlet, fueled by superficial outrage. Navigating this destructive cycle of fame required him to build an impenetrable wall around his sanctuary. In a kingdom desperate to enforce artificial conformity, honoring radical individuality remains an unforgivable aesthetic crime. Number 2. Peter Dinklage and Erica Schmidt. Peter Dinklage redefined television history as a towering cinematic titan anchoring a monumental fantasy epic with unparalleled gravity. Cameras documented a critically revered heavyweight commanding exclusive red carpets, fundamentally shattering decades of Hollywood stereotyping. He was celebrated as an unstoppable cultural force, wrapped in an aura of profound dominance that seemed entirely invincible. That barrier-breaking legacy was viciously undermined when a toxic digital apparatus aggressively targeted his guarded marriage to director Erica Schmidt. Malicious internet ecosystems weaponized their physical differences, orchestrating a devastating PR crisis fueled by cruel public commentary. Predatory publications callously dragged their authentic union into degrading online directories, targeting the actor in a humiliating ranking of male superstars tethered to allegedly ugly wives. Enduring this severe cyber harassment required the acclaimed star to fiercely shield his family from an audience obsessed with superficial metrics. Rather than allowing this destructive cycle of fame to fracture their reality, the couple built an impenetrable fortress. Observers watched a profoundly genuine partnership silently weather a brutal media gauntlet engineered by an entitled society. Navigating global exposure forces genuine love to survive in the hostile glare of public judgment. In a shallow kingdom engineered to worship manufactured aesthetics, maintaining an unvarnished romance is the ultimate defiance. Number 1. Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte Macron. Emmanuel Macron ascended to the absolute pinnacle of international power, projecting an aura of sophisticated, untouchable authority. Cameras documented a fiercely ambitious leader navigating exclusive global summits, carefully packaged as a modern visionary. He commanded a heavily guarded public identity, operating from a fortified fortress of immense influence, seemingly immune to tabloid culture. That formidable armor fractured when a predatory media apparatus turned its aggressive lenses toward his private marriage to Brigitte Macron. Because of their 24-year age gap, vicious digital ecosystems launched a devastating campaign of severe ageism, weaponizing her natural appearance. Invasive publications callously dragged her into a degrading digital spotlight, targeting the leader in humiliating internet directories, cataloging prominent men tethered to allegedly ugly wives. Confronting a relentless PR crisis, the president categorically refused to subject his sanctuary to the toxic demands of superficial public opinion. Instead of utilizing sanitized political deflections to appease aggressive media coverage, he fiercely counterattacked the vitriol, consistently broadcasting his unwavering devotion to the only love of his life. Observers watched an authentic romance quietly withstand a brutal international gauntlet, engineered by a society obsessed with artificial perfection. Navigating this destructive cycle of global exposure forces genuine loyalty to survive under a hostile public spotlight. Even at the absolute peak of worldly power, protecting an unvarnished human truth remains the ultimate act of rebellion. Beneath the relentless flashbulbs and shattered surgical illusions lies a terrifying isolation. These notorious Hollywood scandals aren't just tabloid fodder. They are silent cries from human beings crushed by a machine devouring vulnerability. As the stage lights power down and the manufactured smiles fade, the real tragedy emerges. Here at Hollywood Stars and Scars, we archive these downfalls to remind you, true courage isn't surviving the spotlight, It's finding the strength to walk away before fame breaks you. The most terrifying sound in this town is the deafening silence when the paparazzi finally go home. Fame is a ruthless creditor, exacting its ultimate payment through irreversible vanity and erased identities. To unlock the next vault of classified Hollywood scandals and decode the ugly truths that PR machines desperately buried, subscribe to Hollywood Stars and Scars. Join our archive and never miss a single frame of the industry's darkest secrets. The camera immortalizes the star, but the mirror never forgets the scars. Behind the million-dollar smiles and perfectly staged family portraits, cinema's golden age concealed a horrifying epidemic of domestic tyranny. Fame cannot teach tenderness, and the entertainment industry's most idolized heroes often became their children's most ruthless dictators behind closed doors. You are unlocking the sealed archives of Hollywood Stars and Scars, a chilling dossier of the most deeply buried Hollywood scandals, where vulnerable offspring were treated as mere public relations props or emotional punching bags. This brutal cycle of vanity and psychological torment ultimately leads us to a fateful night in 1984, when a jealous patriarch executed the very voice of a generation. Why did the man who preached divine love pull the trigger on his own superstar son?
Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars.
Number 20. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford reigned supreme as the flawless queen of the silver screen, a vision of cinematic perfection. Flashing cameras captured her immaculate glamour, projecting an untouchable brand of elegance and maternal devotion to a loyal public. She was an unyielding studio-era powerhouse, curating a pristine image that demanded absolute adoration. Behind the heavy doors of her luxurious estate, that meticulously crafted facade fractured into a chilling reality. The cameras stopped rolling, but the demand for perfection morphed into an obsession with absolute control over her family. Her daughter Christina later exposed this hidden life, describing their upbringing as a relentless performance rooted in paralyzing fear. The true depth of this household tyranny remained tightly shielded by studio PR machinery. The glamorous illusion collapsed as accounts surfaced of a domestic tyrant who weaponized discipline. Mundane household items became sudden triggers for explosive rage, most infamously, a simple aluminum wire hanger, sparking terrifying nocturnal outbursts. The contrast was devastating. A beloved Hollywood icon forcing her terrified children into formal evening gowns just to scrub the mansion's floors. A legacy built on celluloid brilliance was permanently overshadowed by the irreversible exposure of this destructive private life. The silver screen's absolute perfectionist was defined by the hidden scars she inflicted far away from the spotlight. Number 19. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby stood as the undisputed symbol of American holiday warmth, his smooth baritone voice acting as the definitive soundtrack for picture-perfect domestic bliss. Millions purchased records and tuned into broadcasts, completely captivated by the gentle, affable patriarch, projecting an untouchable aura of flawless familial harmony to a devoted audience. Beyond the festive studio sets and glowing fireplaces, a severely chilling reality ruled his heavily guarded estate. The public's favorite crooner operated as a cold, unyielding enforcer, relying on physical intimidation, belts and fists to maintain absolute, terror-driven discipline. Tears were strictly outlawed. His children were forcefully prohibited from expressing any natural emotion or vulnerability under his roof. Decades of this relentless psychological suppression manufactured a devastating private catastrophe that the media completely ignored to protect his lucrative brand. The crushing weight of silent obedience fractured his family fundamentally, leaving invisible wounds that no amount of public adoration could ever heal. Tragically, the profound trauma inflicted during these formative years ultimately cost two of his sons their lives, a deeply hidden consequence of this destructive environment. A carefully curated brand of seasonal cheer successfully shielded a household paralyzed by dictatorial cruelty. The man who sold the world its most comforting soundtrack left behind a private legacy defined entirely by irreversible emotional ruin. Number 18. Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda commanded the silver screen as the absolute embodiment of American righteousness, a pillar of quiet strength and morality. Audiences revered his stoic performances, projecting their ideals onto a cinematic hero who always stood on the right side of history. Flashbulbs illuminated his steady presence on red carpets, cementing a flawless public brand that the world implicitly trusted. Far removed from the glowing marquee lights, a devastating emotional disconnect governed his private estate. He could effortlessly command a room discussing art and politics for hours on end. Yet a paralyzing silence fell regarding his own flesh and blood. His daughter Jane Fonda later exposed this hidden life, revealing an agonizing truth. The actor, celebrated for profound on-screen empathy, never once inquired about her feelings. This deep psychological absence engineered a quiet but devastating domestic cruelty built entirely on emotional withholding rather than physical rage. The press championed his calm demeanor, while his family bore the tragic cost of an impenetrable wall. Decades of relentless neglect left permanent, invisible wounds, proving the nation's comforting father figure was fundamentally incapable of basic warmth. The beloved American hero rescued countless souls on celluloid, only to leave his own children stranded in a freezing, silent void of emotional abandonment. Number 17. Ethel Gum. Judy Garland captured the nation with unparalleled vocal brilliance, projecting an image of innocent wonder that captivated audiences. Beside her stood Ethel Gum, outwardly the ultimate devoted stage mother, managing a prodigy destined to conquer cinema. Flashbulbs painted a portrait of a fiercely supportive matriarch, guiding a generational talent toward unimaginable riches. The wholesome illusion shattered when the machinery behind this star-making factory demanded an unnatural pace, prioritizing box office returns over survival. When studio executives handed a 13-year-old powerful amphetamines to sustain relentless production schedules, her mother offered no resistance. Instead of protecting her daughter, Ethel calculated the financial upside, sanctioning a chemical routine that traded a childhood for marquee dominance. A tragic exploitation emerged, transforming a vibrant teenager into a lifelong captive of an unforgiving studio system. Reports stated that this calculated parental failure irreparably devastated the star's physical health, locking her in a destructive cycle of fame. The glamorous empire they built was entirely financed by an exhausted child whose well-being was sacrificed for the spotlight. The ultimate archetype of the ruthless stage mother proved that Hollywood's most dangerous figures were sometimes the parents cashing the checks. An iconic voice that comforted millions was systematically broken by the very woman assigned to protect it. Number 16. Ryan O'Neal. Ryan O'Neal dazzled audiences worldwide with an irresistible, boyish charm that quickly crowned him as one of cinema's most bankable leading men. Paparazzi lenses adored his effortless magnetism, relentlessly capturing a blockbuster idol whose brilliant smile and romantic appeal guaranteed absolute box office dominance. The glittering veneer of this beloved figure rapidly fractured the moment his 10-year-old daughter Tatum unexpectedly eclipsed his stardom by winning an Academy Award. Instead of celebrating her historic cinematic triumph, the acclaimed actor began viewing his own child as a direct, threatening industry competitor. A devastating psychological dynamic took root away from the flashbulbs, where natural parental pride was entirely replaced by a bitter, competitive envy over her sudden media prominence. Life inside their luxurious estate quickly devolved into a toxic environment, defined by intense professional resentment. He subjected the young prodigy to calculated mockery, systematically tearing down her confidence to soothe an increasingly fragile Hollywood ego. This relentless, quiet campaign of belittlement forced a globally celebrated child star to navigate her formative years feeling profoundly insignificant and deeply unwanted by her own father. The definitive romantic hero of a generation ultimately proved that Hollywood vanity can destroy even the most sacred familial bonds. Number 15. Mildred Turner. Lana Turner materialized on the silver screen as the ultimate studio-era siren, an impossibly glamorous icon whose blinding smile captivated global audiences. Vintage newsreels framed her alongside her mother Mildred, projecting an inspiring narrative of a fiercely devoted matriarch guiding her beautiful daughter through the dazzling heights of early fame. Beneath the shimmering gowns and manufactured press releases, lay a deeply predatory origin story born from the crushing desperation of the Great Depression. Refusing to succumb to poverty, Mildred coldly calculated a permanent way out by transforming her teenage daughter into a lucrative commodity. By the fragile age of 16, the starlet was forcefully thrust into exclusive, high-stakes adult industry parties, aggressively shopped to influential studio executives. This calculated exploitation completely eradicated any semblance of a normal upbringing, trading a fundamental right to childhood for absolute marquee dominance. Reports indicated this unprotected exposure to Hollywood's darkest corners established a devastating PR crisis and a destructive cycle of fame leaving permanent psychological scars. The dazzling actress was effectively reduced to a financial lifeline, her innocence quietly auctioned off to secure their luxurious estate. The flawless illusion of a loving stage parent merely concealed a ruthless opportunist who willingly sacrificed her own daughter's youth for a taste of industry power. Number 14. Tippi Hedren. Tippi Hedren arrived on the silver screen as the ultimate icy blonde, a sophisticated muse handpicked by cinema's master of suspense to captivate the globe. Paparazzi lenses adored her perfectly coiffed elegance, projecting an aura of untouchable mystery and refined grace. Flashbulbs painted a picture of a triumphant leading lady who had conquered the highest echelons of the studio system. When her own meteoric rise stalled abruptly, that shattered ambition morphed into a relentless campaign to force her daughter, Melanie Griffith, to live out a stolen dream of fame. Strict, overarching control defined their household. Yet this rigid discipline masked a deeply negligent reality. At just 14 years old, the vulnerable teenager was inexplicably permitted to live alongside adult male actors, thrust unprotected into a fast-paced world of mature industry excess. This devastating parental contradiction fundamentally warped a young girl's understanding of affection and safety. Industry insiders claimed the aspiring starlet was left to navigate a turbulent emotional landscape completely unsupervised, learning how to survive love and fame through a deeply chaotic environment. A mother's lost cinematic glory was forcibly resurrected on the shoulders of an exploited teenager whose formative years were permanently hijacked by adult pressures. The celebrated Hitchcockian muse ultimately proved that the most terrifying Hollywood horrors are not found on a movie set, but in the reckless sacrifice of a daughter's childhood. Number 13. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins immortalized himself as an intensely magnetic leading man, carving a permanent legacy into the bedrock of cinematic suspense. Paparazzi flashes constantly illuminated his striking features, capturing a universally acclaimed star who commanded the screen. He was the toast of the studio system, projecting an enigmatic, irresistible charm. The chilling shadows of his most famous performances ultimately bled into the secluded halls of his private residence. Haunted by the deep psychological wounds inflicted by his own emotionally absent father, the acclaimed actor tragically perpetuated that same devastating neglect. He retreated behind fortified walls of secrecy, transforming his home into a labyrinth of paralyzing silence and unspoken fears. Stifling distance replaced any semblance of parental warmth, leaving a family desperate to understand the stranger living under their roof. Reports stated the revered Hollywood icon became entirely unreachable, terrified of genuine emotional connection. His children were forced to navigate a profoundly isolating upbringing, trapped in the freezing orbit of an unknowable patriarch. This hidden life exposed a devastating cycle of inherited trauma that no amount of box office success could ever erase. The definitive icon of suspense proved that the deepest Hollywood scars are often passed down in perfect silence. Number 12. Rose Hovick. Gypsy Rose Lee and June Havoc dazzled vaudeville stages as a seemingly perfect sister act, projecting an aura of effortless talent and family unity. Backed by their fiercely dedicated mother, Rose Hovick, they appeared as the ultimate American showbiz success story. Flashbulbs captured a deeply devoted matriarch, tirelessly guiding her gifted daughters toward prestigious theatrical billings. The curtain hid a terrifying domestic dictatorship operated by a woman industry insiders definitively dubbed the stage mother from hell. Behind closed doors, extreme psychological manipulation completely replaced maternal care, forcing the young girls into agonizing, sleep-deprived rehearsals that shattered their physical limits. This relentless drive for dominance reached a shocking peak when a loaded gun was allegedly drawn to forcefully clear the path toward her daughter's stardom. Absolute terror maintained this lucrative entertainment empire, sacrificing basic childhood safety for relentless box office returns. The glittering success they achieved was built on a foundation of profound exploitation, trapping the sisters in a destructive cycle of fame fueled by constant intimidation. Reports stated that the enduring trauma inflicted by their own protector left deep, invisible fractures. The ultimate architect of vaudeville royalty proved that the brightest marquee lights are often powered by unforgivable parental cruelty. Number 11. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney exploded onto the silver screen as an unstoppable force of comedic energy, capturing the hearts of a transfixed American public. Paparazzi lenses eagerly chased his infectious charm, documenting a bankable superstar whose brilliant charisma guaranteed box office supremacy. Flashbulbs painted a portrait of an endlessly joyous entertainer, universally adored, and reigning supreme over the studio system's golden era. The relentless pursuit of that glowing spotlight demanded a total sacrifice of genuine domestic stability behind the gates of his private estate. While he beamed for the cameras, a hidden life exposed a fundamentally invisible father who traded familial presence for marquee dominance. Through a staggering cycle of 8 marriages and 9 children, the acclaimed icon completely surrendered his time to the intoxicating rush of fame. This absolute devotion to stardom engineered a quiet but devastating emotional void for the family forced to exist in his massive shadow. His grueling production schedules left behind a profound emptiness, denying his offspring the most basic paternal connection. The beloved cinematic titan was entirely unreachable at home, leaving behind a wreckage of shattered bonds that no amount of audience applause could ever repair. The most energetic performer of his generation proved that an irrepressible Hollywood smile can effectively mask a devastating legacy of profound paternal abandonment. Number 10. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin conquered the silent era as the undisputed king of comedy, a cinematic genius who gifted joy to millions across a fractured globe. Vintage newsreels captured the beloved tramp, an immortal underdog whose gentle brilliance built an untouchable Hollywood empire. He was the industry's most revered pioneer, celebrated globally for projecting profound empathy on the silver screen. Beyond the studio gates that manufactured warmth, vanished entirely. The world's most famous entertainer operated as a relentless domestic dictator, enforcing a terrifyingly rigid regime within his private estate. He mandated absolute silence and blind obedience, micromanaging every conceivable detail of his children's existence. The crushing demand for perfection completely replaced paternal affection, establishing a hidden life, exposed only long after the cameras stopped rolling. Surviving under the immense shadow of a monumental legend proved to be a suffocating, lifelong burden for his offspring. Reports stated that this extreme control shattered their independence, leaving deep psychological fractures masked by immense wealth. The children were perpetually trapped in a destructive cycle of fame, quietly enduring the emotional absolute zero of a father who saved his humanity strictly for paying audiences. The pioneer who taught the world how to smile left his own family paralyzed in a tragedy of unseen domestic tyranny. Number 9. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn defined the swashbuckling cinematic hero, a mesmerizing adventurer who easily seduced audiences with his effortless on-screen charisma. Paparazzi lenses constantly chased his rugged profile, meticulously documenting a legendary romantic idol, whose undeniable charm ruled the golden age of grand studio epics. He was Hollywood's ultimate leading man, projecting a fearless, magnetic brilliance that commanded absolute, unquestioning, worldwide adoration. Away from the glowing marquee lights and meticulously crafted studio sets, this celebrated charm instantly evaporated into a deeply toxic domestic reality. The heroic adventurer operated as a profoundly distant, cynical patriarch who actively derived twisted pleasure from constant psychological belittlement. Instead of nurturing his family, he subjected his own children to a relentless barrage of sarcastic cruelty, systematically mocking their physical appearance and natural intelligence. This unrelenting emotional warfare established a terrifyingly cold environment where vulnerability was ruthlessly punished behind closed doors. When his offspring inevitably broke down in tears under the crushing weight of his calculated insults, the globally adored actor would simply respond with chilling, mocking laughter. Reports stated that this hidden life exposed a devastating contradiction, proving the beloved icon's most authentic role was a devastating architect of familial pain. The silver screen's defining romantic hero was ultimately exposed as a cruel domestic villain who weaponized his own children's insecurities for sheer entertainment. Number 8. Loretta Young and Clark Gable. Loretta Young and Clark Gable reigned as cinematic royalty, projecting an immaculate aura of classic romance that enchanted millions. Paparazzi flashes illuminated their triumphant premieres, cementing an untouchable brand defined by prestige and moral perfection. They were glittering titans of a studio system demanding flawless idols. The glamorous illusion threatened to shatter when a clandestine affair resulted in a hidden pregnancy, instantly triggering a PR panic. To avoid a devastating scandal, a ruthless media cover-up was swiftly orchestrated, forcing the leading lady to vanish for months under absolute secrecy. The crisis was quietly buried through an elaborate deception where the actress eventually returned to publicly adopt her own biological daughter. This extreme maneuver protected lucrative box office returns, but forced a completely innocent child into a lifelong psychological labyrinth. Judy Lewis was raised entirely within a suffocating lie, deeply isolated by the haunting reality that she was a secret that was never supposed to exist. The legendary actors safeguarded their pristine empires, permanently sacrificing their daughter's fundamental right to a true identity. The ultimate price for an unparalleled legacy of silver screen romance was a completely innocent child forced to survive as a hidden ghost inside her own home. Number 7. Marvin Gaye Sr. Marvin Gaye redefined the soul of a generation, a brilliant musical visionary whose velvet voice commanded global adoration. Vintage concert footage and relentless paparazzi flashes captured a triumphant superstar bathing in the blinding glow of unprecedented industry power. He stood at the absolute pinnacle of the entertainment world, his platinum records projecting an aura of transcendent peace and profound emotional healing to millions. Far removed from the sold-out arenas, an oppressive shadow consumed his private world, cast by a radical preacher who fundamentally despised his own flesh and blood. Marvin Gaye Sr. viewed his son's staggering commercial success not as a triumph, but as an unforgivable sin. This fanatical patriarch violently dominated their household behind closed doors, weaponizing religious extremism to relentlessly punish the very fame that funded their comfortable existence. Decades of simmering resentment and suffocating domestic terror spiraled into an irreversible catastrophe just hours before the singer's 45th birthday. A Hidden Life exposed a devastating final confrontation that ended with a fatal gunshot, permanently extinguishing one of history's most extraordinary artistic voices. The grim reality was inescapable. The man who spent a lifetime preaching spiritual salvation ruthlessly struck down his own child in an act of unimaginable jealousy. The definitive architect of an era's music was permanently silenced by the terrifying ego of a father who could never forgive his son's brilliance. Number 6. Joe Jackson. The Jackson 5 revolutionized the music industry, projecting a flawless image of joyful, synchronized sibling perfection. Millions tuned into their electric performances, mesmerized by an incredibly talented family, radiating pure, infectious happiness. Behind this unprecedented musical empire stood Joe Jackson, the seemingly brilliant architect who carefully engineered a global pop phenomenon. The glittering stage lights effectively blinded the public to the ruthless psychological manipulation driving this hit-making machine. Operating more like a merciless military commander than a nurturing parent, the patriarch enforced absolute obedience through punishing rehearsals. Any slight deviation from perfection during these grueling sessions was immediately met with severe physical discipline and targeted verbal humiliation. This unrelenting pursuit of chart-topping supremacy permanently eradicated the fundamental safety of a normal childhood. While the world happily purchased millions of records, the young performers quietly endured profound emotional devastation behind heavily guarded studio doors. Industry insiders later confirmed that this extreme domestic dictatorship forged an untouchable commercial brand at the direct expense of basic human empathy. The most gifted star of the family, Michael spent the remainder of his life desperately attempting to heal the deep, invisible wounds inflicted by his first manager. The architect behind the most celebrated musical dynasty of a century proved that a flawless pop image can perfectly conceal a lifetime of profound parental cruelty. Number 5. Judy Garland. Judy Garland transcended her child star origins to become an undisputed legend of the screen, her voice a soaring testament to raw emotional power. Flashbulbs painted a glittering portrait of cinematic royalty, passing the torch, capturing a triumphant survivor standing proudly alongside her prodigious daughter, Liza Minnelli. They appeared as the ultimate Hollywood dynasty, a glamorous duo destined to inherit the absolute pinnacle of the entertainment industry. That shimmering legacy slowly eroded beneath the crushing weight of unhealed trauma and relentless chemical dependency. The very exploitation that forged her legendary career initiated a destructive cycle of fame transforming a beloved national treasure into an erratic, terrifying presence behind closed doors. Her private residence devolved into a chaotic environment where extreme emotional fragility completely overshadowed maternal stability, leaving her children entirely unprotected from her escalating psychological fractures. Navigating this turbulent reality forced a young daughter to abandon her own childhood, prematurely adopting the agonizing role of caretaker to an increasingly shattered icon. Reports stated that the legendary performer's profound instability engineered a devastating hidden life, trapping her family in the crossfire of her personal demons. The world relentlessly applauded a mesmerizing musical genius, completely blind to the terrifying domestic wreckage left in the wake of her tragic collapse. The definitive victim of Hollywood's golden age ultimately proved that deep studio scars are often a devastating inheritance. Number 4. Sean Connery. Sean Connery defined the ultimate cinematic spy, projecting an unflappable aura of magnetic charm and rugged resilience that completely revolutionized the global box office. Flashing paparazzi lenses eagerly documented an immaculate leading man, capturing a highly sophisticated icon whose tailored suits and effortless confidence commanded absolute international worship. He reigned supreme across the studio era as a symbol of untouchable masculinity, heavily marketed as a hero, seemingly impervious to any human weakness. Away from the dazzling premieres and luxury vehicles, this celebrated cinematic figure operated as an impenetrable, freezing wall to his own flesh and blood. The acclaimed actor mistakenly equated harsh discipline with parental affection, subjecting his son Jason to an overwhelmingly strict and intensely distant upbringing. The glamorous illusion quietly cracked behind heavily fortified estate doors, where the world's most desired man remained entirely incapable of offering basic emotional warmth to a vulnerable child. This relentless psychological distance manufactured a devastating private reality, completely shielded from the daily tabloid headlines. Decades of unyielding emotional absence profoundly fractured their bond, leaving behind a hidden life, exposed as a deeply tragic portrait of domestic isolation. The very stoicism that successfully crowned him a legendary silver screen titan ultimately destroyed the fundamental connection required to truly parent his offspring. The definitive action hero who repeatedly saved the world on celluloid actively chose to leave his own son stranded behind an indestructible fortress of ice. Number 3. Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball reigned as the undisputed queen of television comedy, a vibrant pioneer whose flawless timing revolutionized the entire entertainment industry. Millions of adoring viewers tuned in weekly, completely captivated by her infectious energy and the hilarious domestic joy she projected on screen. Flashbulbs and prestigious awards cemented her status as a universally beloved national treasure, building an untouchable Hollywood empire. Once the studio cameras stopped rolling, that iconic, warm television persona was instantly replaced by an environment of extreme, suffocating perfectionism. She carried the ruthless demands of a powerful network executive directly into her private residence, meticulously scrutinizing every single gesture her children made. Instead of utilizing physical discipline, she deliberately weaponized her affection, forcefully withdrawing love and basic maternal attention the moment her offspring failed to meet her impossible standards. This calculated emotional deprivation engineered a chillingly cold household that stood in devastating contrast to her universally celebrated comedic brand. Her children were forced to navigate their formative years in a relentless state of paralyzing caution, terrified of triggering another sudden freeze from their mother. Industry insiders claimed this hidden life exposed a profoundly toxic dynamic, trapping her family in an invisible cage where genuine warmth was strictly conditional. The unparalleled genius who taught an entire nation how to laugh ultimately maintained absolute control by weaponizing silence against her own flesh and blood. Number 2. Peter Sellers. Peter Sellers commanded the international box office as an absolute comedic mastermind, a cinematic chameleon who effortlessly dissolved into unforgettable characters. Flashbulbs constantly chased this celebrated icon, documenting a brilliant performer whose unmatched timing built an untouchable entertainment empire. He was widely regarded as the ultimate eccentric genius, projecting an aura of boundless creativity that captivated global audiences. When the studio lights dimmed, that beloved brilliance warped into severe paranoia and paralyzing domestic insecurity. He completely abandoned the role of a nurturing patriarch, actively choosing to weaponize his affection against his vulnerable children. Extreme, unpredictable mood swings engineered a chilling household, where rapid transitions from terrifying accusations of familial betrayal to manipulative, tearful apologies became a relentless psychological warfare. This destructive cycle of fame trapped his offspring in an invisible cage of profound emotional whiplash. Reports stated that his complete lack of basic empathy manufactured an environment of absolute cruelty, leaving his family terrified of an unstable father. He demanded total devotion while offering nothing but devastating emotional chaos within his luxury estate. Millions applauded a man who could become anyone on screen, blind to the agonizing reality his family silently endured. The definitive genius of character acting ultimately proved that the most intricate Hollywood masks are often meticulously constructed to conceal a terrifyingly empty heart. Number 1. Osgood Perkins. Osgood Perkins commanded the prestigious stages of Broadway, projecting a sophisticated aura of theatrical brilliance that captivated early 20th century audiences. Vintage press clippings documented a highly respected dramatic pioneer whose commanding presence guaranteed packed theaters and universal critical adoration. He reigned supreme under the theater lights, cultivating an impeccable public brand defined entirely by artistic prestige. The glamorous illusion of this celebrated performer instantly shattered behind the heavy doors of his private residence, revealing a chilling patriarch. Instead of offering parental warmth, he fundamentally viewed his young son Anthony as an inconvenient burden rather than a joy. This hidden life exposed a terrifyingly absent father who strictly maintained a crushing wall of emotional silence, withholding basic affection from his own flesh and blood. Though his life abruptly ended when his son was merely 5 years old, that brief window inflicted permanent psychological devastation. This profound domestic neglect manufactured an invisible void, cementing the deep-seated anxiety and haunting quietness that would later define the younger Perkins's legendary cinematic persona. The celebrated stage actor engineered a tragic cycle of generational trauma, passing down a devastating inheritance of emotional abandonment that ultimately fractured his grandchildren. The revered theatrical titan proved that the most agonizing industry scars are often inflicted through absolute silence. We often consume Hollywood scandals as cheap entertainment, forgetting the shattered childhoods and human collateral left in the flashbulb's wake. This archive at Hollywood Stars and Scars proves that surviving the fame machine requires the profound courage to walk away. When sanity is traded for vanity, the spotlight doesn't illuminate, it burns those forced to stand in it. Protect your peace, because no standing ovation is worth a destroyed soul. When the applause dies and the velvet ropes are packed away, the silence left behind is deafening. A flawless public image is often just a beautifully painted prison, hiding fractured lives the audience was never meant to witness. To unseal the next classified reel of buried Hollywood scandals, subscribe to Hollywood Stars and Scars, Join us as we decipher the chilling truths the industry paid millions to protect before the press erased the evidence entirely. Legends are forged in silver, but the scars are carved in stone.